Good afternoon, everyone. We know these grand solar minimums have been categorized through history, a different way to look at the civilization cycle. And as I'm searching for information, the entire 4,000-year history of every empire that's come and gone. The rise and falls of civilization shows you the solar cycles from 1400 BC, Maunder minimum. Looking at it with numbers, they're specific. So are the grain regions that go offline and cause starvation. That's the downfall of the civilization trigger. And we're heading into another one, October of 2024. Do you see now why the world has changed so much? It's all about controlling the citizens because they're going to become hungry and unruly. Whether we like it or not, our smartphones are data mining machines. Researchers examined 250 of the most popular apps on iPhone and Android, and they found that roughly 60% of these apps share your data with other websites and advertisers. Even weather apps were using user data for advertising purposes. The best way to avoid this invasion of privacy is through the use of a VPN. Virtual Shield is my favorite and should be used by everyone who cares about privacy. You can head over to virtualshield.com, and in the download tab, I'm going to choose Firefox. And click Install Now to add the Virtual Shield add-on. It's just that easy. And get started with your free 30-day trial. Install it, click Connect. You'll see the shield turn from red to green, and you'll see how from my initial service provider I was able to even change my IP. Virtual Shield Network protected. If you're looking for a way to protect your data from advertisers and corporations, you'll love Virtual Shield. Get 50% off Virtual Shield for the next 24 hours by going to virtualshield.com/adapt2030 or click the link in the description box below. And now on with the video. And Martin Armstrong right here putting out a rise and fall of empires, nations, city-states, fiefdom, kingdoms based on energy output of the sun, solar activity. It's a real easy way to see these ebbs and flows, the collapses, the rises to greatness and peaks of civilization and also the Dark Ages. You're looking at 1400 BC, about 700 BC, we got the Homeric minimum, and then we get the collapse of the Mayans. Chinese dynasties are always having difficulty during these transitions as well. To put it into a little more easily, I guess, orange and blue, if you will. Major temperature swings over time. Let's see if any of these match up. Because doing a bit of research, I found this most incredible 1931, featured on Zero Hedge, links in the description box. This Histomap of 4,000 years of rise and fall of governments, empires. And I thought there has to be some visual information inside here. Because as we look at right now, we're starting to see a lot of matchups of what would happen during the Maunder minimum if we were to have another repeat of cooling on the planet in a grand solar minimum. All has to do with cooling oceans, flow patterns, La Nina, El Ninos, ENSOs, North Atlantic oscillations, and so many things to do with the oceans, not just the land temperatures. There's been so many temperature reconstructions done, and they all pretty much match up with the same areas that go offline, or the crops can't grow as well. It's because it seems that jet streams get locked in different places and weather patterns shift, affecting the ability for us to grow crops with the plant by, harvest by date that we've been used to for the last 150 years. Top-down view here as well. So looking at about a 1.75 degrees Celsius change, that would be about 3.25 degrees Fahrenheit, and you can see the same areas where crops are being lost currently. So with this said, the forecast is we're heading into another grand solar minimum right now, tapering into this solar cycle 25, and then definitely into 26. And also you might want to jump over to check this video out here. Charlie Rankin, he goes into such depth explaining the double La Nina that is now affecting us and how much longer that's going to be in play for crop growing and how traders are out looking at this information, expecting droughts in some areas, more rain in others, and it's one of the best videos I've seen on the analysis of the oceans affecting how much and where we can grow crops. That video is also linked in the description box, or you can search by the title right here. Because even looking at a very short amount of time of 800 years of grand solar minimums and effects on society is really not long enough to go into the past. We need to go back thousands, plural, of years, and I'm so happy I found this chart because it goes back 4,000 years. All the way back to 2000 BC. So what I did was I started to pick out and highlight in yellow the contractions, the constrictions of the major empires prior, and then the expansion of some that were coming on just out of nowhere. They just popped out of the blue. There's a good one here. 1400 BC up to about 1300 BC. That 100-year in transition right there. Chinese are to the right, so they were expanding, but an enormous amount of others were in a contraction phase. The Egyptians started to rise. Cooler temperatures brought more food to the desert areas, and the Hittites contracted. India had a problem. So how did the Hebrews just pop out of nowhere? See, something changed in the desert conditions there. So you're looking for the beginnings of empires, kingdoms, societies, and then the constriction of others, because nothing goes to zero. One collapses, another arises. One constricts, another expands. So it gives you a good indication. 3,500 or 4,000 years ago, the deserts were much different than they are today, and they were also moving through different pattern shifts. That matches right up there with the 28th dynasty constriction of the Egyptians, the Phoenicians peak. But then what else is happening as we march forward? There's a couple unknown minimums in here. The 400 BC event rolling through about 300 BC. You'll start to see the end of the Persians as they constrict. So if you go through this chart, you'll see the beginning of the end, literally. When these empires begin that hourglass shape, they're finished. Now something took them into this decline phase. So what was it? And then with the Carthaginians and the Egyptians started to expand along with the Roman Empire. So what is this setting in motion, the change of these great, vast, history book-laden names that we remember from antiquity? So going back through these grand solar minimums, there's only a few that are listed prior to the year 1000 AD. And going back in unnamed, unknown. What about the late antique little ice age? I don't see that here at 535 AD. And then they got the Homeric minimum back at 950 BC to 800 BC. But there's a lot of missing collapses here. So here's the Homeric minimum referenced in that chart, and you'll see the same exact things again and again. Babylonians constrict, Assyrians expand, Syrians expand. So you see this ebb and flow of our cultures, our civilizations based on food production. That's what it's all about. You'll see a slight decline on the right side. That's the Chinese, right around 850 BC. So this will give you a good indication of things that are literally lost in history. So coming up to the late antique little ice age, like about 535 AD is the mark. So 535 to maybe 585 AD. A lot of volcanoes going off. Approximately 25% decline in global population. You see the Huns start to decline. At the same time, the Chinese dynasties have collapsed over there. Once they get flatline, as you can see, right around maybe 600, 650, the dynasties start to come out and rebuild. Food production increases again, and you get this ebb and flow of the Chinese dynasties on the right side. Byzantines expand a little bit. And you see the same repeats again. Once we get around 800 to 900 AD, we see more constrictions, more expansions. So the Byzantine came on at that time. So when you're doing historical searches and you get very limited lists like this, you've already seen a couple that are not even on this list but have been shown through the contraction of the records that there was something that caused that. It didn't come out of just people were being nice to each other. So this brings us into the Sporer minimum, and classical dates are around 1450-ish, Black Death, that whole era. It looks like there's quite a few contractions going on, and especially on the right side where the Chinese are coming into the Maunder minimum, absolutely collapsing into the largest reductions that they had and some 1,000 years prior to that. Significant. And then it stayed cool. It didn't really rebound in temperatures all that much. And then the Maunder minimum was the bottom of the cooling period, as we understand going through these last great grand solar minimum cycles. And through this Maunder minimum, you notice how everything stayed pretty equal there. Nobody was expanding too much. There was some contraction. But why was it so static for almost 100 years? Well, when you have a constricting food supply, again, you get a pullback in population, crushing economy. You need to ask yourself, why is our world being locked down at the moment in such a fashion, and food being the pivotal point of control at the moment? Well, all you have to do is really look back in history, and the world we're seeing today is just a repeat, but there's a lot of knowledge with the elite central banking and militaries know what's about to happen and is in play happening now. People are going to get hungry. So what if I was going to give you a couple dates on when the apex of this first wave is going to be, when there's going to be more and more and more control leading up to October of 2024, because this will be the complete evaporation of stability in our grow zones, and our planting and harvesting dates will occur by this time. Once we reach 2024, we're going to have all kind of interlooping secondary magnetic fields with Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. We're going to have the sun stepping down in activity, which will affect the Earth's magnetosphere and also our jet streams and tug and pull through the solar system. Why do you think things are being set up at the moment for so much control over the food? You're not going to be able to do anything, even access food, unless you behave. Do what you're told. Because in April, there's going to be some significant fallouts as well. The Earth will be tugged a little bit closer to the sun with all those gas giants on the other side. A lot of crustal anomalies, sinkholes, mud volcanoes, landslides, earth cracks, infrastructure breaking and rifting. Maybe they needed an excuse why the supply chains are not functioning so well. Because the Earth's crust is not going to hold as stable as it was, nor will the jet streams to get our food to our tables. Makes a little more sense now why the things are happening on the planet. It's just not random happenstance. It's a cycle. Which is why, in my opinion, everybody's going to need to have some storable foods. 25-year shelf life, 3 months, 6 month, 1 year emergency food supplies. My Patriot Supply and Adapt 2030. That link's in the description box below. Give yourself the peace of mind. You and your families are more grand solar minimum prepared. That link's in the description box below, and it's a great way to support the channel so I can bring you more research just like this. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.